This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, coming to you from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, on the Talkstar Radio Network and the all-new X-Zone Broadcast Network, blasting across Canada, the United States, Central America, the Caribbean, South America, the Pacific Rim, Asia, Africa, and Europe. If you'd like to send an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, on MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com, and our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. My guest this hour is Mark Anthony. He's also known as the Psychic Lawyer. He's a practicing medium who specializes in communication with spirits. He is descended from a long line of psychically gifted people, and for over a century, the psychics and mediums in his family have used their gifts to help people. Mr. Anthony is also a successful attorney, licensed to practice law in Florida, Washington, D.C., and before the United States Supreme Court. He earned his law degree from Mercer University in Georgia and studied law at Oxford University in England. Mark is an accomplished public speaker who regularly discusses life after death and contact with the spirit world. Mark has appeared on national television and radio. The media call upon him as an expert in spirit contact and the paranormal. He often serves as a guest lecturer at universities, civic, religious, spiritual, and grief support groups, and he's with us this hour here in the X-Zone. And counselor, psychic lawyer, Mark Anthony, welcome to the X-Zone.
Thanks, Rob. It's really great to be here. Your show is just awesome. I'm a big fan, and it's overwhelming to be one of your guests.
Well, it's great having you here, and I have to ask you, my background is in law enforcement. I used to be a cop in Quebec. And I have to ask you, when you go to court representing somebody, does your psychic ability give you a bit of an edge?
I think it does, most definitely. In encounters with people, I can always tell if they're lying to me, and especially when I'm doing something like selecting a jury, because I'm sure as a police officer you've been through the jury selection,
yes,
or you've been through a trial and there's the jury selection process. And people sitting on a jury, they're nervous. It's not that they don't want to tell us the truth, but they're not always telling us everything, and I can get a good feel as to whether or not this particular juror would be a good fit for that case. So I use my ability all the time.
Now, you come from a long line of psychically gifted people, and when was your very first experience as a psychic yourself?
Probably when I was about, I'd say 4 or 5. I used to have all of these invisible friends that would come and talk to me. And my sister, she's, I probably shouldn't say this, but she's 10 years older than me, and she used to babysit me, and she would always ask, Mark, who are you talking to? And I'd say, well, the people. And, well, what people? She goes, these people, they're my friends. And my mom didn't have a problem with this because my mother was a medium, and also my father has mediumistic ability as well, but he didn't want me doing that. He felt that, well, because what happened with him is his sister, who also had psychic ability, was taken away in a straitjacket one day because they thought she was insane because she used to talk to spirits. And so that happened in the 1950s, and when he saw this happening with me, he's like, no, I don't want that happening to my son. Whereas on my mom's side of the family, they openly embraced their ability, and they didn't look at it as a negative thing. They looked at it as a gift from God.
Our guest this hour, Exonation, is medium Mark Anthony. He's known as the Psychic Lawyer, and the good counselor and I will be returning on the other side of this 2-minute commercial break as the X-Zone continues from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. If you'd like to send an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. You can always give us a call. Our toll-free number is 1-800-610-7035. Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer, will be back with us on the other side of this break. His website is www.healgriefwithbelief.com. That's www.healgriefwithbelief.com. The X Zone, a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., and then the show is repeated in its entirety from 2 until 6 right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network and the Talkstar. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Medium Mark Anthony is my special guest to this hour, Exonation. His website is www.healgriefwithbelief.com. And Mark, what makes you an expert in the paranormal?
Well, growing up as a psychic and a medium and in a household full of psychics and mediums, and then not only that, but I have embraced this ability and I've studied it under the tutelage of some of the greatest mediums and psychics of our time, including John Edward and Colette Baron Reed, and most notably through the Arthur Findlay College in England. Arthur Findlay College has been training mediums and psychics for over 130 years. And the way the British look at it, and that's why I'm attracted to their methodology, is that this is a science and that we look at it from strictly an evidentiary standpoint. In other words, if I was to do a reading on you, if I just said, oh, you know, your grandmother's around and she loves you, that proves nothing. But if I can actually produce evidence, what she looked like, what she died from, her habits, shared memories with you, her favorite song, for example, then that's evidence that I couldn't possibly know, and that could only be coming from a spiritual entity as opposed to people just doing what's known as cold reading. So I've been working with this for years. This is my life work, and that's why I'm considered an expert in this field.
I was wondering if you could explain to our listeners the difference between a psychic and a medium.
The difference between a psychic and a medium is where we get the information from. A psychic reads the energy, if you will, from a living person, a place, or a thing. For example, if a psychic holds a piece of jewelry, that jewelry normally will retain the vibration or information that the person who owned it had, so you can start getting information from that, or you pick up things from a person. Whereas a medium, we get our information from a third party, which is a spiritual entity. So we're using the same receptive senses, the same receptive psychic senses. It's just that we're tuning into a different radio station, if you will. So the way I sum it up is, if you want to know what's going on with your love life and finances, talk to a psychic. If you want to talk to a dead person, go to a medium.
Is it scary seeing spirits? I mean, what was it like the very first time that you understood that what you were looking at wasn't one of your invisible playmates, as we were discussing earlier, but a person who had passed?
I don't find it scary at all. I find it uplifting and wonderful and very, very comforting to know that when our physical being, our body expires, that what we really are gets out of that body and moves on. So our consciousness, our memories, who we are, lives on. But it can be scary. And I've talked to children that that don't understand what's happening, and it's very frightening for them. And when I was 19, I was in Germany on a student trip, and somebody got the bright idea about visiting Dachau concentration camp, one of the old Nazi extermination camps.
Right.
Well, oh Lord, little did I realize that I suddenly found myself surrounded by the apparitions of thousands of people crying out in agony, and it was very overwhelming for me. So that was scary. But the work that I do as a medium facilitating contact between people here and the other side, it's very uplifting. It's very healing for the people, so I don't find it frightening at all.
How do the spirits know that you are a medium and that you are able to see and understand their communications and give the messages to those that they've left behind in this physical world, or what we call our physical world?
That's a great question. How exactly they know they can pick me out of the crowd, I'm not sure. I don't know if anyone knows for sure, but the theory is it has to do with frequency. In other words, a spirit is on an ultra-high frequency, because when you die, they don't go off to some far-off nebulous place. They go to the collective consciousness of the other side, and so that's a higher frequency. And for some reason, people like me can enhance, or rather elevate their brainwave frequency while in a conscious state, and spirits are able to see that. So they know that I can talk to them, so what they do is they slow their frequency, their vibration down to get a frequency match. So, like I said, it's just like tuning into a radio station. We're in the low bands, and then we tune into the higher frequency, and that's where the spirits are.
When you see spirits, how do you see them? Are they just standing around, or do they materialize at your request?
There's two ways that a medium sees spirits. One's known as objective clairvoyance. Clairvoyance means clear seeing. That's one of the psychic senses. And then there is subjective clairvoyance. Objective clairvoyance is when you see them standing in a room, like they're external to your mind. And it's called objective because when I worked with other mediums, we all see the same spirit, give the same description of what they look like, what their portrait is wearing. But normally, when I'm doing a reading for somebody, I see them in my mind as if it's a vivid memory, and that's called subjective clairvoyance. It doesn't really matter if you get it objectively or subjectively, as long as the information is accurate. But are they just standing around? Sometimes, but they move around, and they're walking around, and they'll show us things. And so when you get into better levels of contact, they're quite active, and they will oftentimes show us things, and they tell us things. And they will transmit feelings to me. It's really great when you get somebody that comes through. I had this guy. He died of a stroke on a golf course, and he came through. And the feeling of love that he transmitted for his wife was just amazing. So it's really quite uplifting to be able to do this.
Tell me, has there ever been a time where you've been communicating with spirit, and that spirit somehow has been able to allow the other person, or the person that you're supposed to be giving the message to communicate directly with that person?
They hear us. So spirits can, in other words, you, Rob, if you wanted to, you can communicate to spirits, all the time. So let's say you have someone that's close to you that passed, and you can say, I love you, I miss you, why did you have to leave? They hear this. So the person here can always communicate. But if we're doing, let's say I'm doing a reading, and the person I'm doing the reading for may say, Mark, I would like to ask a question. And sometimes the spirits will be open to that. And it really is amazing. People ask, where'd this piece of jewelry go? Why didn't you do this? What do you think of my new, boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever? And they normally get a pretty direct response. They won't give me they won't give me winning lottery numbers, and I've had a number of people ask. And I know skeptics say, well, they should be able to give lottery numbers, but that's not what this ability is to be used for. And I don't think that unless winning the lottery or something like that is part of your life plan, that's going to happen.
I've often wondered how people would expect a spirit to know the winning lottery numbers when the lottery hasn't been picked yet.
I think it has to do with spirit's perception of time is quite different than ours. And this is getting into the theoretical. And like I said, the British like to study the theoretical, which is why I study with them. There's a theory that Einstein and Stephen Hawking and a couple other great physicists have put forth, is that time is timeless. Everything that has happened is happening and will happen is going on simultaneously. Whereas those of us in the material world, we believe that time happens in linear fashion. We are born, we get old, we die, so that for us, time moves in one direction. Whereas the reality is that what we perceive as time is only an illusion, and that time is this amorphous thing. It's a continuum. And so that's why spirits and psychics that are able to tap into that can discern future events. It's quite interesting once you get into studying this, and there's a lot of work with people that have precognitive ability, which is a psychic skill. My mother was not only a medium, but she was really great with precognitive ability and being able to forecast future events. But we often don't have control over that. You get a premonition, you get a vision, you get an impression, and many times that just comes to you. You don't have any real control over that.
How does the actual existence here of spirits play with people who are very religious? Don't they find a conflict in between their religious beliefs and their want to believe in spirits?
Traditional organized religions usually say that contacting mediums and doing anything with psychic abilities is wrong. Mm-hmm. However, I've done readings for Protestant ministers, Catholic priests, Greek Orthodox priests, Muslims, Hindus. I've had people of all faiths, even some atheists, have come to me and then afterwards weren't so sure why they were an atheist. And I think that it just depends where you look in the Bible. If you look in certain books like Leviticus is like everything human is wrong. Menstruating women who walk into a temple should be stoned to death. You know, if you eat a shellfish, if you have shrimp, that's an abomination, so on and so forth. And consulting with mediums is bad. But then if you look in other parts of the Bible, let's say the book of Judges, where the prophetess, okay, when you see the word prophet or prophetess, that is the Christian or the accepted Jewish term for somebody with prophetic, which is psychic ability. The prophetess Deborah uses her ability to help the general Barak defeat the Canaanites. Then dream interpretation is also considered a psychic ability. And that's what Joseph did for Pharaoh.
Mark, you and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. Medium Mark Anthony is our very special guest. He is the psychic lawyer. His website is www.healgriefwithbelief.com. That's healgriefwithbelief.com. Mark Anthony and I will be back on the other side of this commercial break as the X Zone continues from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario.
This is the X Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back, everyone. Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer, is our special guest. He's a practicing medium who specializes in communication with spirits. He is descended from a long line of psychically gifted people. For over a century, the psychics and mediums in his family have used their gifts to help people. Mr. Anthony is also a successful attorney licensed to practice law in Florida, Washington, D.C., and before the United States Supreme Court. He earned his degree in law from Mercer University in Georgia and studied law at Oxford University in England. He is a published author who has written several articles on both law and metaphysical phenomenon. His upcoming book is entitled Spirits to the Rescue. It's about healing grief with help from the other side. He is an accomplished public speaker who regularly discusses life after death and contact with the spirit world. And he appears worldwide on radio and television as an expert in spirit contact and the paranormal. He also very often serves as a guest lecturer at universities, civic, religious, spiritual, and grief support groups. And once again, his website is www.healgriefwithbelief.com. You know, Mark, there are so many shows on television these days about psychics, about ghosts. You've got Psychic Kids. You've got a bunch of wacko cops in Chicago who think that they're the newest thing since Ghostbusters. What do the spirits think about all this hoopla about the paranormal?
Well, I haven't really asked them specifically what they think about what's on TV right now, but I do get the impression that the fact that spirit contact is now becoming mainstream is a good thing. Mm-hmm. It's not looked at as a fringe element that only wackos wearing turbans and tie-dye, and if you're wearing turbans and tie-dye, I don't mean any disrespect, but there's this perception that it is this fringe thing, when it really isn't, because we're all capable of having a mediumistic experience. And when I start out lectures, I always ask people, how many people here have ever sensed the presence of a deceased loved one? And inevitably, at least two-thirds of the hands go up, and the other third, they're thinking whether they should raise their hand. But the difference between having a mediumistic experience, where you have a dream, a visitation in a dream, or you sense the presence, or you glimpse them out of your eye, the difference between that and a medium is that a medium is voluntarily capable of carrying on a coherent conversation with a discarnate intelligence. In other words, we can talk to spirits, and we can engage or disengage that ability at will, which is really nice, because until you learn how to do that, it can be pretty disruptive.
But with so many people now dabbling in the paranormal, and I know there are groups of people who are now dabbling into spirit communication, is there any chance that they actually might disrupt the peace and serenity that spirits may want, and could this have a negative effect on them?
That's a great question. I don't think that we can do anything to harm a spirit. And, it's up to the spirit whether or not he or she wants to make contact. Mm-hmm. So you can try to connect with them, but if they don't want to play, they're not going to play. And if they don't want to come through, they're not going to come through. What I tell people in the readings that I do is I can't guarantee any particular spirit's going to come through. I don't conjure up, or I don't summons anybody. But we'll conduct a reading, and whatever spirit wants to adjust their frequency downward to where I can perceive them, then they're going to come through. So I don't think we can affect the peace of heaven. It'd be nice if the peace of heaven would have more effect on us here in the material world. I think we can certainly use that, and I think that anytime people work to expand their consciousness for peace and for helping others and for goodness, then you're certainly doing the right thing.
I don't know if you saw the movie Ghost, but if you did, with Patrick Swayze, how close to that was the contact that the medium played by Whoopi Goldberg? How close was that to reality?
That's probably Ghost. First off, I've seen Ghost like 20 times. Okay. I love Ghost. We've all seen Ghost. We've all seen The Sixth Sense. Ghost is probably about as close as it comes. Of course, Hollywood gets in there, and she could hear him clear as day, perfectly all the time, and it's not always like that. But I thought Ghost did a very good job. I think The Sixth Sense, about the little kid that could perceive spirits, if you take out the blood and gore and all the scary stuff that he saw, that's what it's like. We can tell how people died. You can feel it. Sometimes you can see it. But I've yet to see a spirit come walking up with a machete stuck in their head or something like that. Because when they portray themselves to me, they're they'll oftentimes initially come in looking pretty much how they did right before they passed, so that I can identify who that is. And then they usually look really healthy and really good after that. And now, for example, if I was doing a reading for you, and let's say your grandmother came through, and you only knew her when she was in her 60s, 70s, 80s, all right, if she showed up looking 15 years old, and I'm describing her, you'd be like, who's that?
Exactly.
But that's why she would come in to portray how she looks. Now, oftentimes, and this is really kind of neat, they'll suddenly morph into a younger, healthier-looking version of themselves. And I think the reason for that is to let us know that there is no pain, there is no suffering on the other side. So they're looking great. And then I've also asked, why do you do that? And the response was, because we can. And it's kind of funny if you think about it. It's, hey, if we could all look 22 and great, wouldn't we? And apparently they can.
Where is the other side?
The other side is another frequency that runs simultaneous to this dimension. When we think of, I was raised as a Catholic, and there's this conception that heaven is this far-off, cloudy place
Yes.
where angels are flying around playing harps and all that. But the other side, in reality, is a different dimension. It's a different frequency. So it's going on simultaneously to us, which is why they're capable of popping in so quickly and so prevalently. But what is the other side? I don't know if anybody here in the material world could really understand what it is. I mean, what is it to be pure energy? What is it to live in an energy field? We get glimpses of things that they show us, maybe a bucolic setting in a grassy field or a beautiful island. Is that what it looks like, or is that a point of reference that they're giving us to understand a feeling? And I think it's the latter. I don't know if they live in, cosmic Hawaii, or they're just giving us a representation, because we are limited by our 5 physical senses, and we can't possibly understand what it's like to be there. But the one thing I can say is that the higher bands of the other side, the higher frequencies, what I call heaven, is absolutely paradise, absolutely amazing.
Have you ever had a negative experience doing a communication with the other side? Have you ever come across a negative entity or a demonic spirit?
Well, first off, I don't believe in the devil, and I don't believe in hell, even though I'm a Catholic. Because I don't believe, first off, how can anyone overthrow God? So these fables, and I'm saying that they're fables, of a fallen angel, setting up a revolution and trying to, you can't overthrow God. God is the multidimensional being that is so, powerful, and every living thing, spiritual and here in the material world, is all connected to God. But jerks die every minute, okay? I mean, Adolf Hitler died, Stalin died, hopefully Osama bin Laden will soon be dying, and so these negative energies go to the other side. And I have connected with negative energies. Usually, in the vast majority of times, they're remorseful for their behavior because they're on the lower levels, the darker levels of the other side. And they can get out of that, but that takes a very, very, very long time. And I had one spirit come through in a reading, and he was just sarcastic and snarky, for lack of a better word. And we got to the point where the person that he was coming through for, she just said, let's just get him out of here. And we said, God, protect us with your white light and send this negative energy away. And she said since that time, he's never bothered her.
Speaking about ghosts, what's the difference between a ghost and a spirit?
There's 2 schools of thought on what a ghost is. One is that matter retains memory. So if you walk into a so-called haunted house, let's say a murder occurred there or some type of traumatic passing, that the vibration of that event lingers in the building. And so when you come in, you're getting like an automatic replay. It's like a CD that plays and plays and plays. And so that in that instance, the ghost is no more a living spirit than, say, a a vapor trail is a jet. So what you're seeing is residual energy. Other schools of thought is that a ghost has not chosen to go into the light. It is still choosing to try to remain here in our frequency. And, what do I think about these? I think both of those theories are correct because I've come into contact with both of those type things, and I have been asked to investigate quote-unquote haunted places. And basically it was a spirit going, how come nobody can see me? And I said, well, you're dead. I am? I go, yeah. And there was, how much time do we have before the break?
About 4 minutes.
It's a good story.
About 4 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. I was asked to go into this department store, and this one part, the woodworking section, all the employees were scared of it. They kept getting cold chills. They saw shadows. They heard voices. So I went in there, and I saw construction, the spirit of what looked like a construction worker. And he didn't realize he was dead. And he would reach out to people. So when his energy field interfaced with a living person's, you get an electrical response. And it get the cold chills, so you interpret it as fear. That's why hauntings are spooky and scary. They're not trying to scare us. He was trying to communicate. And so I persuaded him to let go and go into the light and don't be afraid, and God will protect you and your loved ones will be there. And about a month later, the manager of that store called me and goes, I don't know what you did. I said, but all those complaints have stopped. No more voices, no more chills, no more shadows. And the employees are very grateful. I said, well, thanks. But so that's what I think the difference between a ghost and a spirit. A spirit is a living spirit. They go into the light, and the light's the energy of God, or at least how we perceive it. And so they are on the other side, whereas a ghost chooses to remain between this world and the next.
Tell me, do listeners who may have fears of the spirit world or ghosts, do they have anything to fear?
No. First off, I don't believe in possession. I believe in channeling, but once again, you have to voluntarily allow that to happen. And I don't believe that an evil spirit can come and do anything to you unless you accept, emotionalize, personalize, and basically want that to happen. So, but there's really nothing a spirit can do to harm you. And I think a lot of hauntings are misunderstood spiritual entities. Now, this is my opinion. I know that there's shows and there's other people that have differing opinions. But I think that if your spiritual contact comes first and foremost, your contact with God, your belief system in God, you will never have anything to fear from a spiritual entity.
Why does it seem that some psychics always seem to pick up on future events that are negative, like floods, fires, earthquakes, things like that, and never anything positive?
Well, some pick up on positive things, but I think it's just the fact that the negative events have a harder vibration. It's like the low E string on a guitar, get that boom, and it's much denser and therefore easier to pick up than something happy, which is going to be in the higher bands and maybe harder to discern. And, I myself know this and through my family from personal experience, which I know when we get back from break, if we have time, I'd love to tell a story about picking up on horrible future events that unfortunately came to pass.
All right, you and I are going to take a break right now. When we come back, we'll have 4.5 minutes to share that with the X Zone audience. Mark Anthony is our very special guest. He is the psychic lawyer. Here's his website, Exonation, www.healgriefwithbelief.com. That's www.healgriefwithbelief.com. And we'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as the X Zone continues from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, right here on the all-new X Zone Broadcast Network and the Talkstar Radio Network. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Medium Mark Anthony is our special guest this hour. He's known as the Psychic Lawyer. His website is www.healgriefwithbelief.com. Mark, we've got about 3 minutes left. I know you've got a very interesting story to share with us.
A lot of times psychics are able to predict future events, particularly negative events, and I believe it's because negative things have a heavier vibration that's essentially easier to pick up. And I'll never forget, I believe it was back in 1980, and my parents, both of whom were psychic, but particularly my mother, they went to the new MGM Grand that had just been built on the Strip in Las Vegas. And they walk in the door, and my dad's like, "Isn't this beautiful?" And my mother began to sweat profusely, and she began to hyperventilate, and she goes, "Oh my God, it's death. It's death everywhere I look." She goes, "It's a tomb. It's a tomb. I can't breathe. It's a tomb, dear God." And she started just really panicking. And my father realized, oh gosh, she's having a major psychic episode. So we got her out of there. And I remember when they got home, and I was just a kid, and she goes, "That place is death. It's a tomb." Well, a month later, a fire broke out on the MGM Grand, and some of the PVC piping caught fire, and it melted, and it got sucked up into the air conditioning.
Yeah, remember that.
And it asphyxiated 84 people to death, and it seriously wounded another 500. They were able to evacuate, there's like 5,000 people in there at the time. Now, what Mom was picking up on was the fact that this place people were going to be asphyxiated. That's why she was sweating and having difficulty breathing. She was actually experiencing the effects of the fire, and she said, "It's a tomb, it's a tomb." The problem with premonitions is it's not like we're watching CNN or listening to your radio show where you say, earthquake in Kyoto, 50,000 killed, or earthquake, here. It doesn't come with a time and a date stamp. We get the impression, we get the feeling, we may also feel things like Mom did. I could go on for hours with stories like this. This is just how I grew up. I was in New York City in May 2001, and we were right below the World Trade Center. And all of a sudden, I hunch down, and I go, "Oh, my God." And everyone's looking at me. I was with a bunch of my cousins, like, "What is going on with you?" I go, "Falling debris." I go, "If something happened here, you'd be trapped." And they're like, "What is your problem?" And I go, I don't want to go in that thing. Now, I got that feeling. It lasted just for a couple seconds. Little did I know, 4 months later was September 11th. So that's the problem with premonitions, is they often don't come with a time and a date stamp.
Mark, I hate to do this, but you and I have run out of time for tonight. We'll have to have you back on because we still have so much to talk about. Thanks very much for joining us, Mark. Continued success, and like I said, I look forward to the next time you join me back here in the X Zone.
Thank you, Rob. God bless you.
Take care, my friend. Medium Mark Anthony, the Psychic Lawyer, www.healwithgrief.com. I'll be back on the other side of this news break. Don't go away.